they can join us. So welcome to the webinar. I'm going to pass you over to Anne Evans.
Good morning, everybody, or rather good afternoon. Welcome to the Coleg Cymru ALN project webinar using person-centered planning in further education. Thank you all for coming. I'm delighted to have so many people here today taking part in this webinar. Your team for today's webinar includes the Coleg Cymru consultants, Karen Workman and Joe Kelso. They're both providing the technical expertise and making sure that the webinar runs smoothly. I have to admit this is my first webinar. I'm a webinar virgin, is that what you would call me? I wonder, would anybody like to raise their hand to also admit to this being their first webinar? Oh, Chris. Well done, Chris. And Leanne and Emma and Laura. Well, yes. I suspect that it's maybe one day you'll be trying it from this side of the microphone rather than from your side, but it's quite scary. Right, we're also really pleased today. We're going to have Kath Jones from Bridgend College, Specialist Student Support. She's also manager of Western House, who's going to be doing a little bit of input, giving her information about how she uses PCP. The webinar is being run as part of a Welsh Government-funded project, the purposes of which are to familiarise staff who are working with learners with additional learning needs in FE colleges with information about person-centred practice that the Welsh Government has prepared. There's been similar training provided for schools, but it's been recognised that FE may need to use the materials in a slightly different way, adapting them to the needs of post-16 learners and to fit in with FE organisation procedures and practices. The aims of this webinar today are to provide you with information about using person-centred practices and the rationale behind using this approach, to introduce the CPD using person-centred practice in FE, the e-learning module that we've developed, and also to demonstrate how to access in order to participate in the continuing professional development programme. Now, up on your screens now is a slide that I put together really just to describe what person-centred practice means, or what person-centred means. And I realise, having put this up here, that for many of you, you'll know all this because you're very familiar with person-centred practice. But I'm guessing that there are some of you out there that perhaps this is fairly new to you, so I thought we'd start really at the beginning. Person-centred means just that. It means having the person at the centre of all the decision making. Not the system, not the organisation, but the person. Being person-centred means involving the young person at every stage of the procedure, with their views, their wishes, and their feelings being listened to and acted upon. The new draft code of practice, the new ALN draft code of practice that's coming in, says that being person-centred in the planning and providing of support means that the learner is truly listened to and kept at the heart of decision-making. It's the learner's needs that are the starting point when considering the support to be provided, rather than starting with what support happens to be available and then how the learner can be fitted into it. What I intend to do next is to show just a short video clip from Beth Mount. Now, it's an American clip, but it really just shows you what it means to be person-centred rather than system-centred. It's based around health rather than education, but I think it might just give you a little bit of an extra help in this.
From the origin of person-centered planning, we were trying to understand and see what it looks like when we just fit people into systems and defined their needs and saw them through the eyes of what a system needs for a person to be in order to generate the funding that's required and to basically service them. And system-centered work tends to be based on a medical model, which assumes something's wrong with people, and it's the system's job to fix them. And so the system is invested in defining them in terms of their deficiencies and creating a treatment plan, and then working to help people get it right before they get to be members and be whole people in the real world. So person-centered planning offers a major contrast to that, which is to say that people don't belong to systems. They belong to themselves, they belong to their families and their communities. And if we see them in a different light by the capacities that they bring, and we understand that their communities are the place where they can contribute and be citizens, then our thinking shifts dramatically from how to fit people into systems and service them there to how do we support people to live good lives in community, and then how do we take what we need from systems and services so that services are not bad, they just tend to be wired for their own purposes, for their own self-interest. So a good person-centered planning process calls into question the way we use services and invites us to really change the way most of our services are configured to be more responsive to the people and the way that they want to live in the communities that they're in.
Contact us for more information, for a free demonstration or
All right, thank you. If you want to find that video at all, that link, it's on www.openfuturelearning.org. So what do you think is the main reason for you and your institution to use person-centered practice? What I'd like you to do next is to use the pen tool on the left-hand side of your screen and make a mark to show what you think. Do you think we are adopting person-centered practice to fit in with what's happening around us, or in preparation for the new ALN bill, for the learner's benefit, or because it's something that Estin think that we should do, or any of those? Tick in whichever one you want to, or as many as you think are right. I can see some marks going up and a question mark. Yeah, several ticks there. And mostly people are putting their ticks around the learner's benefit. Yeah. Okay. Yes, you're right. It is for the learner's benefit, but it is for other things as well. Okay, so one of the objectives, we've got their legislation as one of it. So one of the objectives of the white paper Valuing People, published in 2001, was to enable people with learning disabilities to have as much choice and control as possible over their lives through advocacy and person-centered approach to planning the services and the support that they need. The document recognised that local authorities would need time to develop this, and over the last 15 years there have been significant moves to develop person-centered practice. On the right-hand side we've got the new draft additional learning code, and that includes the following principles, some of which are statutory requirements or will be. The views, wishes and feelings of the child, child's parent or young person should be at the heart of all decision-making processes. Various person-centered tools, including the one-page profile, are directly mentioned in this code. We've got Estin, yes, they are part of it. Their focus on progression being meaningful and meeting the needs of learners, with the idea that initial and diagnostic assessment really needs to inform both targets and goals and be realistic to whatever the learner is going to be doing next. And local authorities and special schools are using person-centered approach. Learners, particularly those who have been in special schools, will be used to having their reviews as person-centered, and they might well arrive with a copy of their own one-page profile. Parents and other multi-agency partners will expect this as a method for using reviews and may be able to help if organisations are developing the techniques for conducting the reviews in this way. I've had a parent the other week who was suggesting how we might best use questions in a review because she'd done it already before with the school that she was at or that her son was at before that. Okay, and most importantly, of course, we need to adopt this process for the learner's benefit. Some of the tools may be different, but the concept of learner-centered practice is certainly not new to FE. Colleges recognized a long time ago that if they were to enable learners to make the transition into being responsible adults, then the approach had to be learner-led. I don't know if anybody else remembers back to the time of inclusive learning and the Tomlinson report, where we talked about the best match and fit for the learner between the learning provision and the learner's needs and the provision that was available to them. So we've been doing this in further education colleges for a long time now. It's something that we're actually probably better at than schools are. Okay, now over to you. What I want to know is, first, how confident you are at the moment in your knowledge of person-centered practice. We've got there a scale 1 to 5. If you'd like to ring the number that you feel you're at, with 1 not being at all confident and 5 being very confident. 2 3s already? Halfway? Yeah, great. Yeah, Ed? So is that all your team being a 3? And a couple of 2s there, not so confident. And a 4? Great, more 3s. So people are sort of thinking, yes, they know something about person-centered practice, but perhaps not being experts on this. And I think maybe that's where many of us are at the moment. Okay, next question, moving on. How confident do you feel that you are in using person-centered practices with learners? How many of you have actually tried things out with learners? A 2. It'd be interesting to see whether you feel more confident or less confident in the knowledge, because sometimes you know about things but not necessarily know or feel confident enough to use it. Right, so Shirley's read some documents. That's good. But most people, again, around the 2, 3, 4 mark. Again, sort of on the journey, but not quite there yet. That's interesting. All right, and finally, next one. How often do you use person-centered approach with learners at the moment? Are you using one-page profiles? Are you using person-centered reviews? Or are you using any of the tools that are suggested at the moment? Ah, we've got 1 5 there. Brilliant. Nice to know, Leanne, that you're more confident after your recent inspection. Yeah, was that the one-page profiles there? But mostly people are slightly less confident or haven't used so many things yet. So again, that's really, really interesting. Okay. What the Welsh Government have done is they've commissioned Helen Sanderson Associates to write some guidance on conducting person-centered reviews. The guidance is called the Person-Centered Reviews Toolkit, and it's a really useful guide that explains everything about person-centered reviews. Perhaps in Emoticon's box you could just raise your hand if you've seen or read that document at all. Anybody who's seen that document? 3 people, Sharon, Chris, and Shirley. Okay. The document, whether you've read it or not, it includes details about how a person-centered review is different from a traditional review. It summarizes the review process, and it gives you advice on how to develop outcomes as part of the process. It also includes details of what is expected of staff. The toolkit also contains a summary of person-centered thinking tools, and there are other guides alongside this document for preparing learners, for preparing parents, other staff and professionals for using the process, and a guide to which tools you might use as part of that process. The CPD that Coleg Cymru have developed as an e-learning module is to raise awareness of the resources, to identify how these can be used in further education, and the adaptations needed to make sure that they work with learners, with staff, and with current organisational systems. Okay, what I'd like to do next is to link with Kath Jones, who's going to talk to us about how she is using person-centred practice in Bridgend College. Are you there, Kath? Can you hear me? Hello, Kath. Yes, I can hear you too. That's great. Can everybody else hear Kath all right? Kath, do you want to just say something? Yes, it says. Okay, Kath, can I ask you just a few questions, because I know you've been using person-centred practice in Bridgend College, but can I ask you to tell us how you're currently using PCP within Bridgend? I can't hear you at the moment, Kath. I think we're experiencing just a few difficulties with Kath's mic. If you can unmute your mic, Kath, that's great. Right, do you want to have another go, Kath, and see if we can hear you?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, quite faintly. Can other people hear Kath as well? If you want to raise your hand if you can hear Kath. No, I think we're still having a few difficulties here. Right, I was going to ask Kath about how she was using PCP in Bridgend College. She'll perhaps be able to type in the box in a minute, but she told me a little while ago that they had been using PCP with their learners in the residential unit in particular, that they'd been doing things like using the one-page profiles just to get an idea of what people needed. And she was very much talking to me about using bits and pieces of the tools that there were, and making sure, but having that ethos of being person-centered throughout. And I think that there'd been some staff training, but perhaps in a minute she'll be able to type in the box to tell us more. Right, so now I'm going to hand over to the rest of you. What I'd like you to do is tell us by typing in the chat pane what your organisation is doing to introduce person-centred planning or practice. What's been successful and what are the challenges? Right, would anyone like to make a start? Chris is typing. Multiple attendees are typing. Everybody typing at once. It'll all happen all at once. Perhaps I asked too many questions all at the same time. It's easier if you only have to type yes or no. Right, Chris, early stages at Coleg Gwent. Using those that we receive from schools. Yes, I think that's how many people are starting, that they do get them from schools, and perhaps are attending reviews at schools where those reviews are person-centered reviews. Michelle Williams, using them as a pilot with some learners. Is it working, Michelle? How's it going? I know that Neath Port Talbot NPTC group have been using the one-page profiles. Timescale available to complete the PCP is difficult. Yes, I would agree with that. I suppose the only advantage is that actually while you're talking to learners, that you can actually be maybe writing stuff up at the moment. There's the learning manager from Glosscat has just written a blog. His name's Joe Baldwin, and he put down 6 different reasons why he thought that actually it was useful to be using these, and how it can sometimes actually make things easier, not more difficult. I'll put the link in later for you. Joe Baldwin, Joe with an E on the end, at Glosscat. And I'll send the link out to everybody. Okay. Ed, using PCP every day. As following requests outlined in profiles, outlined in learning skills plans. We review these plans on a regular basis. That's great, Ed. Sounds as if you're well on your way there. Judith, attending PCP reviews at local schools, looking to introduce in September. Do you think that you'll need to change what the schools are doing for it to work in FE, Judith, or will it work in the same sort of way? Particularly on the time basis, I'm wondering for that. We've got several people typing now. Right. We tried to do some one-page profiles this year, but found it difficult to find the time for the staff to complete this with young people. We've never had a profile from a school, only one from social services. I know that when it was introduced into NPTC group, when I saw it, it was done as part of the induction process. The one-page profile is a very short document. It's a photo and then 3 short bits on it. And perhaps sometimes when it's used at the very beginning in that induction process, that might solve some of those time problems. Anybody else got any solutions to that? Sharon, early stages piloting the introduction to gain information, the transition of learners from independent living skills programs to other programs for learning initially. Yeah? Thank you very much, everybody. That's brilliant. It's interesting to see how people are developing these things. Our ethos is very much about inclusiveness, yes, and I think that has to be the basis for it. What we will be doing is later on, I know there will be a conference, an additional learning needs Coleg Cymru conference that Chris Denham's the chair for, and we'll probably be sharing some of the best practice from this and from other parts of the project that we're running there, and perhaps have some more information there as well. That's great. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for that. Okay, just before we go, Kath Jones at Western House uses the one-page profile initially, as I use the profile as an icebreaker with residential students. That's a really good idea. On the first night stay, all leavers complete the person-centered transition booklet, and the day students with NEET learners. I think that was supposed to say NEET rather than NET, but yes, that's great. The other thing that I've seen somewhere, again I think that was Glosscat, where they were using one-page profiles with their staff, with their support staff, and every member of support staff wrote a one-page profile, partly with the idea of how to do it, but also with the idea of then being able to match the interests of the staff and the skills of the staff with the needs of the learners. And Joe at Glosscat seemed to think that that worked really well. I thought it was a great idea as something extra to do. Okay. Now, just to give you a little bit of information about the e-learning module, we developed this e-learning module to provide a short introduction to the use of Person-Centered Reviews Toolkit with post-16 learners. The modules that we've developed, we hope will support you to become familiar with person-centered practice and the rationale for using this approach. We hope that it'll help you to explore the toolkit, to reflect and consider how the content might be used with post-16 learners to enhance current practice without creating an additional administrative burden. Hopefully it'll develop practice. It's been designed in a fairly easy way to help you to find out more about the toolkit. There are additional materials, including links to video clips and extra reading. There are also tasks and questions to allow you to reflect. There's no assessment on this module, but you might find it useful. There are tasks and questions along the way to actually make notes of the questions or your answers to them and use them within your teams to help develop best practice. What I'm going to do next is to hand you over to Joe Kelso, who's going to talk you through how you can find out more about the module, the e-learning module, and how you're able to log on to our Colegau Cymru Moodle. So I'll pass you over now to Joe.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so you'll see in front of you that we are asking you to go to the Colegau Cymru hosted Moodle. It's just a very handy way of everybody in our sector being able to go to one point of reference, but clearly you will maybe not have already given us some information that we will require. So if you filled in a Google form to request the ability to be part of this webinar, we might have some contact details for you. If not, we need you to fill that form in, please, where we ask you for your email address, your professional email address. That will allow us to then set up an account for you so you can access this material that's been put together for you. Okay, when you do a general search using your favorite search engine, Google Chrome tends to not let one down. You could just search for Colegau Cymru Moodle and it will eventually navigate to the page that you'll find in front of you now. When you do find it, you'll be able to log in using the login button that appears on the right hand side, and it will then take you to a page where it will ask you for the email address that you've shared with us. In a while, and this will be in the next few days, so we won't have immediate access for you, but we will at the end of the week. You will put your email address in, and the password we will set will be the word, top secret word now, so don't forget it, password. However, don't worry, we are not violating any good digital literacy practice, because the first thing that you'll be asked to do once you've put your professional email address and the word password in is you'll be asked to change your password to something that you are going to remember. Once you've done that, you will be able to access the materials. Again, there's a system for doing this, and that the page in front of you will now change to have your name shown in the top right hand area where previously the button had log in. You need to select My Dashboard from the list that becomes available to you, and on the left hand side the screen will be populated with any courses that have been assigned to you through Colega Cymru. The one that you're looking for is Colega Cymru CPD ALN project. You simply click on it and it will take you to your learning materials. It's a case then of reading through them and taking the opportunity to discuss what's in there with your colleagues in order to deepen the understanding that you've got with regards how you conduct person-centered reviews in further education, obviously with a focus on really adding benefits for your learners. A comment that you shared with us, Kath, is about the way this allows your learners to be more empowered and self-advocate, and clearly that is something that we want for all of our learners. So if it's being used in that way, it can clearly only be adding value to their lives as they are learning. Okay, so I will now hand you back to Anne, but although we've gone through this with you live now, remember we do have a recording of this, so following this webinar we will make the recording available to you, and then you can go through the instructions again with the actual Moodle website there available in a different browser window. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. That's brilliant. Just before I move on to the next one, are there any questions about the module or about logging in or anything else that you would like, or about the webinar so far, that you would like to put into the chat pane? Kath Jones, at Weston House we've found learner needs to remain in control of their plan, needs to be revisited regularly, as it needs to change and evolve over time as the person changes. Yeah, really good point, Kath. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Leanne. Yeah, Kath, I wondered whether we could just try your mic again and just see whether we can get you speaking. I can hear something. Hello, Kath, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can just about hear you. I think you may need to shout.
Okay, I'll shout.
That's brilliant.
Okay.
Okay, shall we just do those, can you just talk us through what you've been doing in Bridgend and how you're using PCP?
Okay, so as I said,
Yes, shout.
we've got both a residential and a day provision. So in residential,
Yeah? So you're using it with both the residential and the day provision?
well, we started it in the residential.
You're cutting out a little bit, but I think I got that you started it in the residential.
Yeah, and it's crossed over.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. What's been the challenges in introducing it, Kath?
I think the staff are very fearful of quite new. And also,
No, that is cutting out a bit there, Kath.
sorry, we found that some staff were fearful.
Yeah?
Yeah, so
No, I'm not quite getting that, Kath.
sorry.
Okay, I think everybody's struggling to hear from you. Perhaps we'll have a go at that later. But thank you very much, Kath, and thank you for volunteering to do that. Right, moving on, just to our final slide. I'm so sorry that we've had those technical issues, but that's the way it goes sometimes. I've just put this up as a final slide. There's a quote there from Steve Jobs. I don't know whether it's still relevant for him, but it certainly is for us. It's not the tools that you have faith in. Tools are just tools. They work or they don't work. I think certainly with the technical stuff here. It's people that you have faith in. Yeah, sure, I'm still optimistic. I mean, I get pessimistic, but not for too long. We hope that you've found this webinar useful, and I really do hope that you find the e-learning module useful as well. There are lots of resources out there to help you to develop person-centered practice in your organizations, but just sometimes it can feel that the thought of it is just so overwhelming. But I'd like to leave you with the thought that you don't have to do it all at once. The most important thing is not that you have to follow the whole process all at once, but that you introduce the processes gradually, thoughtfully, that you review what you've done with each baby step that you and your organisation take. As long as you keep the learner at the centre of the process, then the steps that you take will be in the right direction. And just finally, if you use the e-learning module and you have any comments or any suggestions as to how we can make it better, it's not perfect yet by any means, we will be tweaking it, then please do let us know. I'm going to pass you over to Karen, but thank you all of you for attending. I do hope that you have a lovely Easter and the Easter Bunny brings you lots and lots of Easter eggs. Bye.
Thank you, Anne. Just wanted to say thank you to Anne Evans for conducting her very first webinar today. So perhaps if you could use your emoticons to show your appreciation for Anne, I'm sure that she would be very pleased to see that. Thank you as well to yourselves for joining us and for taking part. Thank you, Kath, for joining us briefly with your microphone. Next time perhaps we will come to you and broadcast from Bridgend so we can find out more from you. If you would like us to or you would like to participate in more webinars, please let us know, because this is obviously a really good way that we can share good practice across Wales. We're going to end the meeting now. We're going to stop recording. To leave us, all you need to do is close your window. We will email out to everybody the recording and how you need to access that. But again, if you were sitting around a computer and you weren't on the keyboard, we have put the link into the form, so let us know if you'd like a link to the Moodle course. But thanks ever so much this afternoon, and we're going to sign out now. Goodbye.